Someone wanted to know if when they go and see the doctor, can they record the meeting between them and the doctor? So New Jersey is a one-person consent state, basically meaning that as long as one person in the conversation knows that the conversation is being recorded, then they can do that, and they can also then use that for purposes of we'll say cross-examination. So in other words, when the medical examiner for the IME, the independent medical examiner for the insurance company says, oh yes, I did this report and I spent 30 minutes and we have the recording that shows that they were there for 6 minutes. It's great for purposes of cross-examination if we have to get that far. Goes to credibility, certainly, and very helpful. Also, from the standpoint of how many times do I hear clients tell me that the doctor said, oh, yeah, when I was in with the doctor, he said, oh, he's going to make these recommendations, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, the next thing that happens is they turn around and say, oh, no need for treatment, right? So always entertaining when that happens. So when it comes to those meetings with doctors, you can definitely do it. And it's, like I said, very, very helpful for purposes of cross-examination. But that was a quick question that had also come up again. The next thing that I wanted to discuss, someone had asked about when they apply for Social Security disability for the first time, if they get sent to a doctor for Social Security. Two parts to the question. Why are they sending them to someone who is got nothing to do with why they're disabled? I'll explain that in a minute. And then the second part of the question is it good or bad to go and see a doctor? What happens if they are not seeing a doctor? Is that a bad indication? So first, anyone who is applying for Social Security, what you have to understand is there are different evaluators or different claims people, if you will. So each has their own sort of methodology. It does not require that somebody gets sent to a doctor. But if they do, it's because that particular person in that particular cubicle likes to send people to doctors. If not, then they don't. Not only the reason that they send you to a doctor that's got nothing to do with your actual disabilities is because we'll say it this way, trying to be as nice as possible. They're sometimes not the brightest bulbs on the porch, sharpest tool in the shed, right? You following where I'm going with that? So there are times where we have someone who's had physical injuries and they're getting sent to a psychologist. I can't explain why. I always tell people go, because you never know what the doctor's going to say. And if the doctor says something that's positive, great, helpful. If the doctor says something that's not helpful, the answer is, well, Judge, if we had to get that far, the answer would always be, Judge, I'd like this eliminated because my client's disabilities have nothing to do with that. I have no idea what Social Security sent them to this doctor. So the only thing it can do is help. So there's no reason not to go. But the reason that you sometimes get sent to somebody who has no idea or the wrong information is because not the brightest chains on the shed or whatever, not the sharpest tool in the shed. So that was that question. And then the other question that I had gotten, which was actually a little bit more interesting, had to do with, so you've heard me say it before, where pensions, disability pensions and Social Security are railroad tracks, right? Remember, if you're, as an example, let's say you work as a corrections officer, right? And you can't go back to doing corrections, but there's other work that you can do. Well, you can do that as long as it's not anything to do with corrections, because pensions, disability pension, that is benefits. Those are benefits that are saying that you are disabled from performing that job. But if you're disabled and you can't do any job, then not only are you able to apply for your disability pension, but you're going to apply for Social Security disability as well. So those two things are train tracks, right? They are not going to touch one another, meaning that you can collect your full disability pension and your full Social Security disability, and they don't offset each other, okay? So that's those two things. Now, someone asked, what about if I have a private long-term disability plan? So let me start off by saying it this way. My area of expertise, as I've said for now years on this show, and what I do three things. I do three things very, very well, and I refer other cases out. Workers' compensation, Social Security disability, and disability pension appeals through the state of New Jersey, right? And that's teachers, police and fire, or public employees. So those are that's our wheelhouse, okay? But I've done this now long enough where there are other things that come into play, and I know enough of most of these other things to, we'll say, be a little dangerous, which is why I answer as basic questions as I can. And then I say, I have a very good friend of mine who handles this, and I make the referral, okay? So, but when it comes to a private long-term disability policy, so if I'm working for a company and part of my salary goes to pay for my long-term disability, if you receive a long-term disability policy through your job, first things first, it's going to fall under what's called ERISA, E-R-I-S-A, which is the Employment Something Insurance Security Act. I always forget the R. But bottom line is this. It's an employer-sponsored plan, which means that it's going to fall under the umbrella of federal litigation, meaning that any lawsuits have to take place in federal court. And most long-term disability policies that exist indicate that they get to reduce how much they pay you if you receive money from other places. So if you get money from workers' comp, your long-term disability goes down. If you get money from Social Security disability, your long-term goes down. Policies that are in place usually have like a minimum, like they have to pay you $100 a minimum per month, right? So what happens is, let's say you're supposed to get $2,000, but you're getting workers' comp money, you get Social Security money, whoop, the long-term disability goes down to whatever their minimum is. So the question had come up, what if I have a private plan? The answer is the private plan is impacted by everything else because those policies, for the most part, are not worth the paper or the money that you are paying for them. The reason being simply that they make it as impossible as they can to get the benefits, and then will independently send all of your information to some doctor in Florida who never sees you, who then says, nah, you're fine. And so they write you a letter saying, oh, our internal review has indicated that you're not disabled. So now you got to go on this sort of chase to get other doctors to say you're still disabled. And you have to sue them in federal court. And the worst part about this whole thing is that all you get are the benefits that they should have otherwise paid you, in the sense that there's no punishment for the insurance company screwing around on the non-payment or whatever of those long-term disability policies. So not really worth the paper they're written on. But the question had come up, and just basically for our purposes, you remember pensions, Social Security, railroad tracks. Don't touch each other. You get the max from both. But if you did have a private plan out there, that is absolutely going to be impacted by everything else that you get. Now, it's interesting because older policies, like, for example, I have a policy that I bought when, I'm going to say back in 1994, and those policies don't have those kinds of offsets. Plus, the older policies only indicated, like when I got my policy, it basically says that I can't be a litigator, not that I can't be a lawyer. So if, let's say, something happened and I couldn't do what I do, but I could still practice law, then I still get paid on the long-term disability policy because I can't be a litigator. They've gotten rid of all of those kinds of provisions now, and the policies nowadays are, in my opinion, god awful. I'm not a financial planner. I'm not telling what anybody to do. Certainly converse with your financial guys or your health insurance people or whatever. But I'm telling you, in my opinion, Sam Gaylor, from my research and everything I've looked at and read, not worth the paper they're written on. Not worth your money anyway. So let's put it that way. So, but again, that's my opinion.